I don't even know what to say. I feel like Arsenal can't catch a break right now. Welcome back to the Arsenal Humans podcast with me, Luce. I hope you're all good. You know what? The sun is shining. I mean, it's shining in London. I don't know whether you're watching this in London or not, but if you are, I'm hoping you're enjoying the weather. I feel like blue skies, few clouds. You know what? Whatever the weather, it is sunny. It's feeling good. I'm trying to distract from the fact that the football is not sunny this week. I mean, we had 3 games. I predicted 3 wins. We didn't even win any of the 3 games. We lost one of the games, but luckily we did enough in the first leg of the Women's Champions League that secured us that spot in the semi-finals. We then had a really, really bad weekend because we got knocked out of both the Men's FA Cup and the Women's FA Cup. It just feels like this week, I don't know, when I first started prepping this pod earlier, I was like, okay, start of the week, great. And then as you get to the weekend, I don't even know what to say. I feel like Arsenal can't catch a break right now. Like this weekend, I feel like the media is going to go crazy. Other fan bases are going to go crazy, understandably, because, I mean, you know what? When we deep it right now, the only silverware that Arsenal can actually win, actually get their hands on this season, is the Women's Champions League, the Men's Champions League, and the Premier League. I feel like, yeah, that's what we're down to, because the UWCL, it seems a bit far away. Obviously, FA Cup we're knocked out of. League Cup, that's over, did not go our way for either side. It just, yeah, it feels like it's all riding on this. And so, yeah, I'd love to have another positive episode on the Arsenal Humans podcast. I feel like recently we've been quite blessed as Arsenal fans that there's been a lot of positivity spoken about us. But I feel like this week it's not gone our way. I mean, obviously we got knocked out of the FA Cup on not just Saturday, but also Sunday. Yes, we got through to the semi-finals of the Champions League on Wednesday, but that's pretty much overshadowed by VAR. So I feel like this week has been such a confusing, shocking week for Arsenal that, you know what, I didn't even bother doing a warm-up poll because I was like, what question could I actually ask this week? Like, realistically, let me know if you have any thoughts down in the comments below, because I'm like, what could I actually talk about? Because I was going to mention the FA Cup, but like, it's done now, it's happened, we're not in it. Then I was going to go back to that original question of, would you rather the Premier League or the Champions League? I feel like right now we just want any piece of silverware, but it has to be that Premier League and maybe the Champions League as well. I don't know. We've skipped out the warm-up poll for this week, but I do feel like the weather is saying, like I said at the start of the episode, in London anyways, we're going to go to the whatever the weather section, because I do feel like there's some sunny things to talk about. Yes, I've started this episode a little bit rainy, a little bit ranty, but let's get into the whatever the weather section, because I do feel like there's some positive things to take from this week, despite what the media is saying and despite what basically everyone's saying about Arsenal right now. So let's get into that. So if you're new here, the whatever the weather section is basically where I attach a weather condition to a headline that's happened on or off the pitch for Arsenal during the week. It's a little feature that I just basically want to add a few headlines in, because there's so much to talk about each week with Arsenal, and some of it doesn't even happen on the pitch, that it's like, how can I fit it in? So this is my way of trying to fit it in. And the first thing, I've got to talk about the good moments that have happened from the men's international break for the players that actually did go, because obviously that's been in the media a lot and everyone's been talking about how obviously a lot of Arteta's squad has withdrawn from their international duty, and I've spoken about it the last couple of weeks. So if you want to go talk about that more, go check out those episodes the last couple of weeks. But focusing on the players that did go, I just want to spotlight 2 players. We've got UWCL, because obviously he did score that hat-trick for Sweden, but the goal I want to talk about is the one which secured Sweden a World Cup spot this summer, and I just think it's great to see him excelling, obviously, on this stage. This goal actually took him to 15 goal contributions in 22 games for both club and country in 2026. And it's just so interesting, because I feel like UWCL at the start of the season, there's so much debate around whether he's good or not and whether he'll be able to excel at Arsenal. I do feel like he's able to excel more for Sweden than he is for Arsenal, but we are seeing more glimpses of promise from him, and I do feel like as time has gone on, he's found his feet in the league. Is it too late? I don't know. Obviously, we're going to have to see if we can get it over the line in terms of the Premier League, but there seems to be real promise, and it's very encouraging to see that, basically. The second person, obviously we have to talk about Max Dalman, and that goal pretty much was a solo goal for the under-19s. It made it 2-0 against Portugal, and he basically, just ran from his own half, breezed past a few players. So it's just great to see that they've been able to translate that already, and hopefully that continues for the rest of the season. The second thing I want to highlight, it is a sunny headline because Arteta got Manager of the Month for March. And another thing that's good to highlight, despite obviously what the game was and how Katie McCabe got her 300th appearance, we have to obviously spotlight that Katie McCabe has now played for Arsenal 300 times. There's a lot of speculation around whether Katie McCabe will be at Arsenal this time next year, whether she will be there even beyond the summer. Ultimately, I feel like, yes, these probably are looking more likely the more we're seeing this and the more we're seeing the behaviours and stuff, but we've just got to make the most of having her in the squad right now. And obviously it's a great achievement to make. I feel like a lot of players, both the men and women's side, are creating a lot of milestones, or reaching a lot of milestones, should I say. The final thing, it's a negative thing. I've basically addressed this weather condition. I've actually gone for 4 this week because it kind of links into the games that I'm sadly going to have to talk about in a bit. But both Arsenal men and Arsenal women have been knocked out of the FA Cup this weekend in the quarterfinal. Let's talk about them. First, we've got to talk about that Champions League game, which is actually quite positive, even though it seems a little overshadowed. But let's get into all the games that have happened this week. We've got 3 games to look back on and 2 games to look ahead to. So yeah, let's try bring some energy, but also realism to this episode as well. So yeah, enjoy. Chelsea 1, Arsenal 0, which means that Arsenal are through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. You know what? It was 2-3 on aggregate. I did predict it to be a 3-2 win in this game specifically, which would have meant a 6-3 aggregate score, but it doesn't matter because Arsenal are through no matter what. But sadly, I feel like the positivity, which should be completely oozing out of every Arsenal fan, every football fan being like, wow, Arsenal through again, only in the land, still got that title going, because obviously United went out because they lost to Bayern, and obviously Chelsea went out because they lost to Arsenal in this game. But this game has been completely overshadowed by VAR, and to be fair, I feel like both legs were completely overshadowed by controversial decisions by VAR. And specifically in this game, the incident that we have to spotlight was that hair pull. And whether it was intentional or not, Katie McCabe did pull Alyssa Thompson's hair, which is obviously a red card. I completely understand why Sonia Bonpasta would get annoyed at that and why she would ultimately end up receiving a red card herself, because you'd think that any manager with that passion for the game, you could not fault her passion whatsoever, and wanting to defend their player, they'd speak up and they'd be that passionate that ultimately it would lead to that consequence. I think ultimately that is just very poor decisions by obviously the referee. You can make mistakes, referees can make mistakes, they're only human, but when you have VAR there to actually back you up, that's something we don't really have the luxury in a lot of women's competitions in football, but in this competition we did, so I don't understand why we didn't use that resource. I mean, it wasn't even reviewed. I was literally sat in the stands thinking, oh okay, there's a lot of outrage going on around there, but it was the other side of the pitch and I couldn't really understand it, and it was only till I watched after that I was like, that was blatantly a hair pull. But the thing that is frustrating me about this game and all the noise that has come out since is that yes, the women's game deserves better officiating, but Arsenal got through because Chelsea weren't clinical enough. It's not as if this VAR decision, if it was made, it would have guaranteed them a position in the semi-final, because they just couldn't find the net in the final third. They had multiple chances. Yes, they did win on the night, but it wasn't enough because Arsenal managed to do enough in the first leg. And I think that's something that people are constantly forgetting, because the media noise is continuously about this VAR decision, which obviously, as you can hear from an Arsenal fan, I backed Sonia Bonpasta. I completely agree with all these Chelsea fans, and I think a lot of football fans as a whole completely agree that it's not good enough. But I don't want this to take away from the fact that Arsenal did enough. I kind of want to switch the narrative back to Arsenal and being like, you know what? We got through and that is really good. I want to highlight a few players. I feel like a few players like Holmberg, Mead, they came on and they gave it their all. They were crossing it in, especially Holmberg. She's such a forward-thinking player, and I feel like since she's joined Arsenal, she's been so good for the squad. But 2 players in particular that I want to highlight, that from the minute they stepped on the pitch right until the end, they were putting their bodies on the line and they were fighting. And first one obviously has to be DVD, because we have to spotlight her. I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say apart from that DVD saved Arsenal. Without her, I don't think we'd be in the semi-finals of the Champions League. And similar narrative is with Lotte Wieber-Moy. There were so many tackles, especially we saw in the first leg as well, on Lauren James, who we know is a player that can just easily breeze past anyone. Yet Lotte Wieber-Moy was able to stop her. And this repeatedly happened this game as well, not just with LJ, but with other players as well. And I feel like they had pretty good squad. Obviously, they ended up winning the night. We did really well. We didn't even have the likes of Chloe Kelly. She didn't even come on, and we still managed to obviously get it over the line. overall, because across the two legs it was 3-2 on aggregate. I think ultimately, what does this mean? This means we've progressed into the semi-finals, where we'll play Lyon, which is obviously a big side to come up against. In the Women's Champions League, they're arguably one of the best, obviously alongside Barca, who we saw beat Real Madrid 12-2 on aggregate, which is insane in itself. I feel like this is going to be quite a big game. It's actually our next game that we will play because we've now got an international break. So the ultimate question I feel like this is going to pose is, will we see a rematch of that Arsenal-Barca final, and can it actually go the same way? Like, can Arsenal retain their Champions League title is the ultimate question. It was such a tight game, such a tight derby. I love being at both games. It was such a good experience. I feel like you can't beat Chelsea versus Arsenal. It's exactly why the Women's Champions League is so, so good. Moving on to the weekend, obviously this is the FA Cup weekend. We know the FA Cup is the longest going trophy. We love it. We love what it represents. Sadly, the FA Cup did not love us this weekend because we've got knocked out both by the men on Saturday and by the women on Sunday. So Southampton 2, Arsenal 1. I did predict it to be a 2-0 win. I actually predicted both to be 2-0 wins. So let's not even talk about my predictions. Focusing on the Southampton game on the Saturday. My first takeaway, I feel like pretty much our only attacking outlet was a 16-year-old in Max Dowman, which is great for him. It proves how fearless he is, and I feel like a lot of people have been talking about him and hyping him up as they should be. But it's kind of not good enough that Arsenal are relying on someone so young and quite inexperienced, obviously in the first team, to find the net. Also, Gyökeres, he did well when he came off the bench as well, which is obviously what I said in the whatever the weather section. These two players excelled in their international breaks and obviously were able to translate and replicate that in this game. I think, though, ultimately I could try and pick out a few moments that were great for Arsenal, but Southampton just outplayed us. Their tactics seemed to be better than us on the day. Not an excuse, but we didn't have all our players fully fit, which I'm hoping they can come back in the next few weeks. But it just goes to show that with that international break, not only was Arteta being cautious by making players withdraw from their international duty, but also some were actually genuinely injured. As we've seen, it's obviously cost us another trophy. And is this actually detrimental to our season? I have no answer for that. Honestly, let me know what you think down in the comments below, because when you deep it, the last two games we've played, we've lost in the Carabao Cup final, which has got rid of the League Cup trophy. We've also been knocked out of the FA Cup in the quarterfinals, which has got rid of the FA Cup trophy. We're only now left with the Premier League and the Champions League under Arteta, and it's going to heat up the pressure. But in a way, I'm hoping that they can see as a positive that we can fully focus on the Premier League. Obviously, would have loved to have progressed in the FA Cup and in other competitions and have silverware, but these are the cards we've been dealt right now, so I feel like we've just got to get on with whatever this is. Okay, so the final game of the week was Arsenal 0, Brighton 2. I actually predicted it to be the other way round, but, you know, can't win them all. I feel like in this game, there are a few moments like Holmberg, she had a one-on-one with the keeper. I feel like Fran Kirby was great. Obviously, she got both assists for Brighton. The first goal by Hayley was, I mean, I don't think anyone would have been able to get a hand on that. That was never, ever going to be stopped. And obviously the second one by Hayes. I just feel like, yeah, they were the better side again. It's so hard because looking at this weekend, this could have been so exciting. We had teams that we probably on paper could have beaten. But the same with Southampton outplaying Arsenal men. Brighton just completely outplayed Arsenal women. Like there's no other thing of, oh, we were like unlucky or this happened. It's just one of them things. Another question that I've put down, is this detrimental? And I think realistically, this now gives us the Champions League as our only piece of silverware we can win. So obviously it would have been great. I feel like I've actually spoken a lot on the Arsenal Humans fan zone, so if you haven't watched it, definitely go watch it, because there's lots of different episodes with a lot of people's stories of why they support Arsenal, whether they work in sports media or not, or whether they work in the industry, and hopes for the season. And a lot of people were saying that their hopes was that Arsenal would reach the FA Cup final, imagine Wembley way, and like how good it would be. And we just didn't manifest it basically. And I feel like that's a piece of silverware that would be so good to bring back to Arsenal. Sadly, it's not going to happen this year. And maybe Champions League is our only hope to retain a piece of silverware. And I mean, it would be a pretty good piece of silverware to win. And if we can obviously come second in the league as well and get closer and at least secure the Champions League that way, because we know the Champions League will not be easy. But yeah, ultimately, I just feel like it was a bit of a humbling weekend. I don't know if that's the way to put it, but that's basically what happened. So yeah, that's 3 games, 3 losses, but luckily one of the losses didn't matter too much because we've still qualified for the semi-finals of the Champions League. So yeah, can't wait to talk more about that one in a couple of weeks' time, where we get into the prediction section when we'll be back. But this upcoming week, we've got no games for the women's side because they're on their international break. I feel like we keep having so many breaks, kind of annoying times, because you kind of want to keep momentum going, or you kind of want to right the wrong straight away. But hopefully, it'll be a positive week for the men, and then the women will be in action in a couple of weeks' time. Tonight, the men are back in the Champions League. It's Sporting versus Arsenal. It's 8 p.m. and it's the first leg of the quarter-final. On paper, Arsenal have been drawn an easier run, I want to say, through to the final. But at this point, I don't know if we can call anything easy, because we've seen obviously what's happened in the FA Cup when supposedly we got an easier draw against Southampton. Anything can happen. It's football, and ultimately we just need to win. If we want to be fighting on multiple fronts, if we want to win 2 competitions or take 2 competitions seriously and get through to the next stage, we can't take any chances. We have to win it, and hopefully there will be some players back in action. I'm going to go with a nice, simple 2-0 win. I think this is very doable. I feel like Gyökeres will probably be a standout player for this, obviously playing against his former side, and we know that he's recently picked up form both for his club and country, so I'm hoping that this obviously pays off here. Kind of hoping we can see a similar sort of vibe at the weekend, because it's Arsenal versus Bournemouth on Saturday the 11th of April. It's a 12:30 kickoff in the Premier League. It's not an easy one. I do feel like a lot of people are saying that this is a game that we just have to get it over the line. We can't settle for a draw at this point. We have to be finding that win, not only for momentum, but obviously we want to widen that gap in the Premier League at the front. So, you know what? There's a lot of nerves from a lot of people. We need to quieten those nerves and just hope that we can get some sort of form going. So I'm going to predict this to be a 3-1 win. I do feel like, 2 games, 2 wins. Once again, I've gone for quite an optimistic approach. Hopefully we don't see a repeat of last week where all my predictions were wrong. Hopefully we can actually build some momentum for the men, and hopefully obviously the women have a positive international break. I feel like I said hopefully a lot, but right now it feels like all we can do is hope, because it's completely out of our hands. And I just guess we have to back the players as always. Let me know obviously down in the comments below anything you think about Arsenal this week, the week coming up. I feel like there's a lot to talk about, especially when we look at the weekend that we've just had and the games that we're playing and what they can mean for Arsenal, especially the men in the title race and obviously competing in other competitions like the Champions League. A lot has been said this episode. I hope it's not been too negative, too ranty, or too delusional when I've tried to be positive in certain spaces. But let me know anything down in the comments below. If you haven't already and you'd like to join this growing community called the Arsenal Humans Podcast, then you can do so by subscribing. I'll be back on Friday with a fan zone where we get to hear the thoughts of another Arsenal fan's journey into supporting the club, into the sports media industry, and their views on the season as a whole. And then I'll be back next Tuesday where we can reflect on the 2 games happening this week. So have a good week, Arsenal fans. I hope it's a better week than last week for us.